Hello, people. It's your boy Ismail back again with another Manchester United podcast. Yes. As you can see from the title, you're probably wondering why is this guy mentioning Ten Hag every single second of the day. But listen, we have to address the elephant in the room. What does Ten Hag need to change for Manchester United to be successful in the coming weeks? And obviously, for the bigger picture this season, we're going to be addressing all those things. I'm joined by a very good guest. But before we get into that, make sure you slap a like and subscribe to the channel. The homie code already in here saying drop Anthony. I mean, no love lost there for Anthony. But yeah, like I said, make sure you follow the socials. Obviously, my guest's name is in the title as well, so obviously, I'm sure you know who she is, anyways. But listen, without further ado, introducing the homie, day one of the biggest content creators out there. I might be right in saying this, I might be wrong, but the biggest Manchester United female content creator. Again, don't quote me on that, I might be wrong, but nevertheless, absolutely fantastic, blowing up on every single platform, and rightfully so. As I already said, my day one homie. Welcome to the show, as always, Alice. Good to have you back. How are you doing?
Good to come back on the show. Thanks for the lovely intro. And it's good to be on the show, but unfortunately, a lot of negativity around the club. And I'm hoping the Glazers just go. That's all I want. I don't care about Ten Hag. I don't even care about Anthony being rubbish. I just want the Glazers gone now. And Qatar, obviously. I don't want another Glazer in charge.
Yeah, I mean, you and every single United fan. I mean, if there's any United fans who've got a different opinion to that, then quite clearly they probably spoil Liverpool. So listen, no, let's just brush up on that. Obviously, I did actually do a show not so long ago about that, and I know you obviously mentioned it as well. What are your thoughts regarding that situation? Do you think there's any truth into the speculation, or do you think it's just complete fabrication from Neil Custis, obviously from the Sun, of course?
It's a difficult one because I think there's NDAs, and I think every single story that comes out on the Tigger needs to be taken with a pinch of salt. And I think the fact that none of the reliable sources have corroborated this, you're like, okay, like personally, this isn't something to get excited of, 100%. Also, it's the Sun, but Neil Custis isn't awful, but the timing of it, you can think PR spin. My sort of first thought is this is probably a PR spin, and no one else is corroborating this, so I'm not going to get giddy. But he does mention this kind of October, November deadline, and he's mentioned that a few times. And I think maybe come September, because David Ornstein said there's a feeling there could be a resolution in September. Maybe come September, we might hear more come out, and maybe there's some accuracy in this, because I think the club is at boiling point. The Glazers have been more like, if you stay, you're basically idiots. Like, the club is at boiling point. The Mason situation, that's been quite negative and horrible. It's not been nice being a United fan, especially online these last few weeks. Losing to Spurs, losing to Burnley, like everyone else signing, and the way that the Premier League is going, and the money in football, the Glazers haven't been able to take dividends out the last 2 years because we're not generating that kind of money. So they're at a point where economically they can't stay, and I think they know that Qatar can afford 6 billion, and they're wondering why Qatar are bidding 5.2 billion. And I think they're just playing this game for Qatar to up their bid. And what Neil said a couple of weeks ago was that there's a feeling that Qatar are actually doing due diligence ahead of another bid, but no one else has got on that. So again, it could be a lot of waffle, but he does have connections to major shareholders at United. And I think if someone's going to know stuff, it will be the shareholders that are higher up this stuff. And I think really with this story, I'm not going to get giddy. No one's corroborating it. We've heard this so many times again, but I wouldn't be surprised if we hear some positive news on Qatar in September, October, if we hear some movement. If there could be something in this November sale date, that would be about a year. Newcastle took about a year. And I just think the Glazers can't stay. It makes no sense for them to stay. So that's my sort of thoughts on it.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me personally, you kind of touched on it there, surely. I actually think it's a PR spin personally. And the reason being is, well, there's a few reasons. The first one, again, you touched on it, Neil Custis, he definitely gets information from the club. Is he potentially trying to, cover up the situation with the Greenwood? I think for me personally, the club has been dire straits of late. And for me, our club is brilliant at distracting the fans. I mean, this is a great thing to distract the fans, because obviously it's a bit of a positive news story in comparison to what's been happening with the Greenwood stuff. I just think the timing is too suspicious for me. I mean, we've just got absolutely slapped by Wolves. Quite clearly, it's not been a good, not Wolves, sorry, Tottenham even. Well, we did get slapped by Wolves as well, but which is why you said we lost those games. But Yeah, I just think the timing for me really, really reeks of PR, and I'm sorry,
Yeah.
but it's hard to get behind anything that comes out. Like you said, no credible sources are, are obviously repeating what Newcastle said, and for me, that again is another red flag. I just think there may be truth in it, but I just don't think the reasons for it to come out within this period of time were genuine.
Yeah.
I'm hoping as a fan, as you said as well, from the jump, and off camera as well, that the Glazers need to go. I mean, for me personally, this is probably one of our worst windows we've had. I know we've had some really bad windows post Fergie, and
Yeah.
I'm not going to say it's the worst one because I definitely can think of probably maybe David Moyes' summer window when he just bought Fellaini.
Yeah.
Obviously, the worst, but there's a couple of others that are probably up there as well. But just the situation has gone from dire to like dire straits. I mean, the Maguire situation, the McTominay is staying, Henderson's not gone. I mean, Fred went, okay, but we got literally peanuts for him.
No replacement.
No replacement for him. Got peanuts for Zidane Iqbal. Got peanuts for is it Emeron? I'll probably pronounce his name wrong.
Emeron, yeah.
Yeah, he's gone for 1 million, I believe, but we bought him for 2 million, so we somehow made a loss on him, which is absolutely embarrassing. There's so many players. I mean, for me personally, the whole situation is just ridiculous, and I think the manner in which they've sort of dealt with it is also obviously pretty much a bang on brand with the Glazers. They've got absolutely no clue, and also why I think the timing is extremely suspicious is the fact that there has been murmurs that there might be a protest on Saturday, 1958, of course, very vocal and obviously the forefront of organising the protest and shout to them every time. But, I've seen a lot of social media posts from them and other people sharing, etc., about a potential protest on Saturday. And it seems that as soon as every time there's like a protest, and this could potentially be a humongous one, always something positive comes out about Manchester United, wherever it may be, maybe transfer news, maybe obviously the Glazer situation or whatever it is. There's always a positive PR spin. And for me, it just stinks of another situation where they're trying to deflect, take a bit of the limelight out of the Greenwood situation, how badly they obviously dealt with that. I don't really think many people are actually talking about that now, although it's only 48 hours. Most people are talking about this takeover. So for me, they've been successful in what they've wanted to do. So fair play to them. But as a United fan, I'm just sick to death of it, to be honest. I mean, you just don't know what the truth is anymore. This club, and like you said, it's like it's coming up to a year now. Obviously, you mentioned the fact that with Newcastle, it was a year for them, but I just have no hope. I've got to be honest, I've lost hope. I mean, I genuinely thought that the Qataris were going to win. Like, there was that period where everyone and their dog was essentially saying, it's done, it's done, it's done. And at that point, I actually had hope for the football club. And then, that kind of has been sapped out of me. But I don't want to be too negative. Obviously, we've got a couple of games to obviously look forward to. I must have said here, evening all, shout out to you. Obviously, shout out to everyone in the chat. Make sure, obviously, keep slapping a like and subscribe to the channel. Get your questions in and, of course, get your comments in. I know I'm not really normally recording at 7 o'clock, but, nevertheless, hopefully you guys are enjoying it. But, yeah, listen, let's talk about, obviously, some of the other things. Obviously, we've kind of spoken about the Glazers. So, with Glazers, we go transfer news. Amrabat. I mean, I'm sick to death of talking about him. I've got to be honest. I think I've talked about it for more than I've talked to my family, to be honest. At this point, it's just Amrabat every day. Like, there has been reports coming out from Sky Sports and other media outlets today saying Fiorentina essentially waiting for Manchester United. And Amrabat, as we know, is no longer part of the first team setup. He's been training on his own. What are your thoughts on that situation now, Alice? It's gotten to the point now that just 21 million as well. Like, what on earth is actually going on?
It reminds me of the Frankie de Jong situation, but the other way around. This time, it's the player wants the club, but the club ain't bidding for the player. Whereas with de Jong, we bid for the player and we're waiting for de Jong. We're waiting for de Jong for months. And it's like Amrabat. It's just waiting for United. It's like that situation in reverse. The player wants United. He's rejected big offers from Saudi Arabia. He rejected Juventus. He told Liverpool his preference was United. And he agreed personal terms with us 2 months ago. And I know if we don't get him, you get Samuel Atkinson and the United PR come out and saying, oh, we're never in for him. If we're in for him, we would have put in a bid. No, we are in for him. We wouldn't agree personal terms with him 2 months ago. We wouldn't have Fabrizio Romano tweeting every day for the last 2 months that he's our number one target if we weren't in for him. The player agreed to join United 2 months ago. The fact that he's rejecting Juventus, Liverpool, big Saudi offers, it's clear he's got a feeling that United really want him. Obviously, wouldn't be rejecting them if he was, clearly United have indicated they will go for him. But United are doing this, we can't get rid of him until we sell Donny. For me, that makes no sense because Mason Mount's replaced Sabitzer. So surely we need Amrabat to replace Fred. And then if Donny goes, why don't we get Gravenberch on loan to replace Donny? That's how an effective run club would do. But United are doing this thing, and I was talking about in my stream earlier. The thing that annoys me about United is instead of replacing a player, we go, oh, we don't want to spend the money, so we'll do like something small on the cheap or a loan deal or something. You know, Ronaldo went, we didn't want to replace him, so we got Wout Weghorst. We still technically not replaced Ronaldo because that, you know, Højlund was meant to come in as a young, like Julian Alvarez type signing, and then we're meant to get a big striker. You know, we've been crying out for a midfielder and a striker, I feel like, for 2 years. You know, and it's like we've not done that. You know, we haven't replaced Fred. We're linked to, again, Johnny Evans coming at the centre back. Like, no top. I like Johnny Evans, but no top club would sign Johnny Evans. Would you see Man City bring Johnny Evans in? Would you see Man City bring Wout Weghorst in? You wouldn't. And I think the thing with the Amrabat situation is the player wants the club. Terms are agreed. It's 21 million apparently now. It was 25 million. It's 21 million. If you watched Wolves and you watched Spurs, we were crying out for Amrabat. Casemiro's not been at his best, but I don't think that's completely his fault. Casemiro needs someone to play closer to him. Amrabat can do that. Amrabat can give cover for Casemiro. He's literally available, begging to join for 21 to 25 million. And United are going, FFP this, FFP that. Screw this FFP this, FFP that. You've got a year to sort out FFP. It's not, you're completely lying. You're making excuses. It's Glazeronomics. The Glazers want any money they can take out in dividends. So that's why they don't want to buy Amrabat. And it's just draining now. It's just draining it. It's like Frankie de Jong. Every day we're hearing Amrabat this, Amrabat that. If we were a serious club, we'd have signed them. And I did a tweet the other day. I don't know if you saw it. And I said, since we've signed Højlund, we sold Fred for 15 million euros, Kovar 9 million euros, and Emmeran 1 million euros. That's 25 million euros, which is 21.3 million pounds. So we've made 21.3 million pounds in outs, not to mention wages, since Højlund's been signed. So surely, you know, that money could go directly towards Amrabat. Am I like, this is what I
they've got no excuse. I mean, as you said, like, why are we having to wait for Donny van de Beek? Fred's already gone. We haven't replaced Fred. I mean, it hasn't really been spoken about much because it wasn't particularly live, but Pogba hasn't been replaced either. So obviously Pogba went last summer. Obviously, well, this summer actually on the free. And then obviously Sabitza's no longer here. He's gone back. Obviously Fred's gone. So you can kind of say we've lost 3 midfielders there. Technically, obviously Kogi Manu's gone injured, so that's another one. Yeah, for me personally, there's been absolutely no planning whatsoever. Erik's legs are gone, so he can't really play week in, week out as well. So I suppose my next question is there a fear now with essentially just a week left or so that we might not actually get that Amrabat deal off the line if it's something that's going to happen?
I am scared because I know Man United, you know, we always thought we were going to get De Jong, and then like even like a week before the transfer window closed, we kind of felt like De Jong was unlikely, but there was always a feeling we were going to get De Jong a year ago. There was always a feeling we were going to get Sancho and do something. And, you know, we would link to Sancho a whole season, we didn't buy him. We linked to De Jong a whole season, and we didn't buy him. And I know Amrabat's different because he's a different price range and he wants to come, but it's like, is Amrabat going to be this guy that we're just like, we're doing videos titled on deadline day, Amrabat bid, Amrabat deal, and then United just make no movement? You know, is it going to be one of those where, you know, we're feeling that something's going to happen, but we don't? Because United is pretty persistent in this, we want Amrabat, but we've got to sell first. We want Amrabat, but we get to sell first. And I just think it's outrageous to see, like, if you've watched the first 2 games of the season, we shouldn't need to sell first to sign Amrabat, because it's not like he's 60 million pounds. I get it if Amrabat was expensive, but he's like, we can afford him. And for me, I just look at this and I go, I don't get it. Like, maybe this is some big tactic from John Murta to lower his price tag because it seems to be lowered. But I just think this is United. Yeah, we'll do something right at the end of the window. We'll play poor, see if we can get him. It's either we're doing this as a tactic to get him for the bare minimum and using FFP that, FFP this, and maybe the reason Amrabat's rejected other clubs, and this is just a fear. Look, we're gonna get you on deadline day because you're gonna be even cheaper. Fiorentina got your replacement, la di la. But you just don't know with this club because they're used to letting us down.
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, I think it should have been done about 6 weeks ago, to be honest. 100%. I mean, I just don't understand how he wasn't available for pre-season. Now we got in a situation where he might not be available for Arsenal, so it's just a joke, to be honest. Obviously, we know Mason Mount's out now for 4 to 6 weeks, which essentially means he's only got Eriksen available for selection. And obviously Scott McTominay. I mean, Scott McTominay is surplus to requirements. He's not wanted by the manager. hence why he's been touted to be sold. We rejected the Scott McTominay bid. I mean, yeah, granted, we could have probably got 30 to 35 million for him potentially, but we rejected 30 million. Yeah, we might have been 5 million short, even 10 million short, but just get the guy gone. Quite clearly, he's not part of the manager's plans. He could have brought Amrabat in ages ago for that. So,
Honestly.
yeah, for me personally, it's just been an absolute shit show. I mean, obviously, you mentioned Gravenberch there as well. I just don't understand why McTominay and Fred couldn't have both gone and Gravenberch and Amrabat come in. I just don't
Makes so much
understand.
sense. Yeah.
It could have just been 2 for 2. I mean, like I said, Pogba's already gone, okay. Just say Mason Mount replaced Pogba, so it would have been 3 for 3 at least. But we basically got rid of 2 midfielders. Kobe's got injured. Eriksen is surplus to requirements somewhat, or he's just not available for certain games because obviously his fitness. And then you've only got McTominay available, essentially. So he's only got that against Arsenal. You're really going to play Eriksen. He's going to have to play McTominay that game. Just for the fact, unless he plays Hannibal, but again, that's another player from the academy. So for me, it's just an absolute shambles. You should have had him ready. I mean, I do worry the longer it goes on. Obviously, you mentioned there that it potentially could be a deadline day signing, but for me, I just don't trust him to get it over the line. I'm a bit worried. I've got to be honest. If we don't get Amrabat, I don't see us getting top 4, regardless of how good or poor the other teams are. I mean, Liverpool haven't really set the word alight, neither of Chelsea, so to speak, but for me personally, you can only look at ourselves and we're absolutely embarrassing. I mean, the fact that we got played off the park against Spurs in that second half and the manager's been there for like 5 weeks and then we got played off the park at home against Wolves and the manager's literally been there 3 days. So
yeah,
it just says everything. It just says a lot about the situation in United. But listen, obviously, I have mentioned Mason Mount there very briefly. What are your thoughts on that situation? Obviously, there's been a lot of people, me included. I suppose I've not been that critical of Mount as of yet, but what are your thoughts on that midfield situation? Obviously, if you're Erik ten Hag, who are you bringing in to replace Mason Mount there?
I said this from day one when we linked to Mount. I said Mason Mount is not in my top 10 names for United to sign, but if the manager wants him and the manager is desperate for this guy, I'm okay with this signing if we bring in another midfielder that can play more defensively alongside Mount. I said literally, I'm okay with us signing Mason Mount if we just signed Lavia or Caicedo or Amrabat on top of him. That was my whole feeling on Mason Mount. It's like, this is an okay signing as long as we don't think he's going to solve our midfield issues and we still get that DM, Lavia, Caicedo, obviously they've gone. Amrabat. So the fact that we haven't signed Amrabat and we've just signed Mason Mount to do that Fred role is massively worrying because I actually thought first half versus Spurs, Mason Mount was one of our better players. I'm not a big Mason Mount admirer. I don't like that midfield three. For me, it doesn't work. And the reason it doesn't work is because one of them needs to play closer to Casemiro. Maybe if we played Bruno deeper, like when Bruno played deeper a little bit towards the end of last season because Casemiro is out, maybe it could work if Bruno drops deeper, kind of plays more as a defensive 8 next to Casemiro and Mount as a 10. Just please do not put Bruno out wide is all I ask. Don't like that. But with Mason Mount, I think he's one that I think a lot of us, me and you included, we weren't the biggest fan of his signing, but I thought we signed him. I'm going to back him. I don't want to knock his confidence. He wasn't good in the Wolves game. No one was good in the Spurs game, but he was definitely nowhere near the worst player. While the midfield did cause us problems, I actually think the front three was more to blame versus Spurs because we had a higher XG than Spurs. We created 4 big chances in the first half. And arguably, I do think had we maybe got, I'm not blaming the penalty, but it was a penalty. Had we maybe put one of those chances away, Bruno should have scored, Anthony should have scored. Had we maybe gone 1-0 up, had we maybe had the penalty and gone 2-0 up at half time, because I think going in at the first half, yes, we'd have conceded a few chances, but I think we were the better side. Maybe it'd have been a different game. But then the second half was shambles. And my biggest fear is actually I don't think we're physically up to it. I don't think, but I don't know if you saw these running statistics, this account released all these running and distance cover statistics. I don't think we're up to it physically.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that you say that because this time last year, obviously, after 2 games, we were very much in a similar situation. Obviously, we lost that game to Brentford, and obviously, it was well documented that Ten Hag went on the run with the players. And that was somewhat of a turning point with the players and so forth, so to speak. But for me personally, I just don't understand what's going on because a lot of the players that we've got in our front line, minus Rashford, really are actually known for being great off the ball in terms of their running stats. Obviously, Mason Mount's come in the team for his ability off the ball as well as on the ball. More so probably off the ball because he's absolutely phenomenal in terms of what he brings to the team in terms of his pressing, his work rate, etc. Anthony's work rate is very good. Obviously, we've got Bruno Fernandes there as well. His work rate is very good. Garnacho's somewhat questionable at the moment. Obviously, that's something that probably needs to improve. But for me, it's just really surprising. We massively look off the pace for me, and I don't really want to make an excuse because we've had a full preseason, and a lot of the players have somewhat contributed to that preseason, and I just don't understand why we look so off the pace. I mean, prior to the game against Wolves, if I'm not mistaken, we lost our last 3 games in preseason. Obviously, went into the Wolves game off the back of 3 losses essentially. Yeah, it's preseason, but of course that confidence was obviously low at that stage. We go into that Wolves game, get outrun, outfought, get absolutely dominated in every aspect of the game, and then go into the Spurs game and it was the exact same situation in the second half. I mean, as you mentioned, I thought we were brilliant in the first half in periods, and we definitely should have been at least 1 goal, if not 2 goals to the good. But we looked like we completely tired out after like 40 minutes, and Spurs grew into the game. And obviously, in the second half, we looked like we were on our last legs. For me personally, watching that game, and we looked sluggish, we looked off the pace, and to be honest, it's just ridiculous. I'm sorry, it's absolutely inexcusable for Manchester United to be in a situation where it looks like the players aren't fit enough. Maybe he's asking too much for them, and the intensity is too high. But I'm sorry, it's just not acceptable to drop off that much. I mean, I'm sure you've seen the stats as well. The fact that all 3 of our midfielders are the top 3 for players run pass or dribble pass. I mean, with Bruno on 7, Casemiro on 6, and Mount on 4, it's just embarrassing. Honestly, for me, he has to change a lot. Obviously, his hand has been forced with a mixed amount of injuries, so it'll be interesting to see what he does with that situation. But to throw another question to yourself, what would you change? Obviously, one change, like I said, has been forced in. But if you're Erik ten Hag, what's like the biggest thing that needs to change going into this Forest game? Like, what's like the one thing, or maybe a couple of things, because I'm sure there's a massive.
There's more than one.
There's at least 10. But like, what would you say that important?
The least of our problems is the back 5. Yeah, they weren't great against Spurs. Martinez was rash, but the least of the problems is Onana, Shaw, Wan-Bissaka, Varane, Martinez. Like, I think once Casemiro gets better and they get more protection, got no issue with the back 5 right now. Obviously, right centre back next summer would be good. Maguire out. I think the issue is when we is in the second and final third. It's that going forward. I think it's the lack of control at midfield. Casemiro could be in his prime, and he's still not. If you leave him on his own that far away, with Mount and Bruno that far away from him, what do you expect him to do? One of Mount and Bruno, if he's going to persist with this, needs to drop deeper. Essentially, the way I look at it is our best midfield 3 this season would be Casemiro, Amrabat, Bruno if we sign Amrabat, or Casemiro, Maino, Bruno if generally I'm saying Kobbie Maino, who's 18, who I've watched 4 pre-season games of, just because of the balance, would be our best midfield 3. So I think the most important thing would be to bring in Amrabat. Because we need that balance in midfield. If Casemiro is not at his best right the season off, we need to make sure we're playing to Casemiro's strengths. He's our best player. So if I had to make one major change, if we play to our strengths, let's play to Casemiro's strengths. So let's have someone drop deep to support him. Let's play to Rashford's strengths and keep him on the left wing, because Rashford at striker is basically 10 men. Let's play to Bruno's strengths and not move him to a right winger. Do you know what I mean? Like, Bruno is hit and miss, but if we play to Bruno and Rashford's strengths, who are arguably the only 2 people on our team that can score goals, and we can play to Casemiro's strength, who's our most important player, because if he doesn't have a good game, we don't have a good game, I think we'd be better. But I just think when Højlund comes back in, even though he scored 9 goals last year, he's going to make such an impact. But I also want to see Sancho on the right, Højlund in the middle, and Rashford on the left when Højlund's back. I want to see Sancho on the right wing again.
Yeah, 100%. I think, well, I'm being so biased. I'm picking the Sancho out of everything you said there. But I'm going to start with Bruno Fernandes, which is someone that I've criticised a lot. For me personally, if you're going to play players like Bruno Fernandes and Marcus Rashford, you have to play them in the situation and basically build an environment where they're going to flourish. I mean, we've now got a situation where Bruno Fernandes is kind of in a situation where Pogba was, where the balance is disrupting his sort of ability to be successful. And I think for me, yes, I've been very critical of Bruno Fernandes, and I do think a lot of that criticism is warranted. However, the midfield balance is definitely affecting him as well. And I think Rashford in particular as well, another player, he's not really got much support in the front line. I mean, Anthony, well, what can I say about Anthony Garnacho? To be fair to him, not really offering much support from starting, and it just seems like a lot of the players aren't playing in the favorite position, as you alluded to there. If I see Bruno Fernandes on the right wing instead of Palestri, honest to God, I'm going to lose my head. Like, honestly, there's no way, there's no scenario where Bruno Fernandes or Mason Mount or any of the midfielders should be starting on the right wing when we've got players like Palestri on the bench. I mean, he's more than capable of playing 30 minutes, and it then affects Bruno Fernandes' game because he's in a position where he's not particularly familiar with. He has absolutely next to no impact, and of course that has a negative impact on him in terms of psychologically. Obviously, he knows himself he's not playing well because obviously he's out of position, that kind of thing. But for me personally, the midfield balance, like you said, is obviously the most important thing. I would actually bring Eriksen in for this game. I think that's the one thing I would definitely change for the Forest game. Is Eriksen is extremely important because he's one of the few players that has the capabilities of actually putting their foot on the ball and actually controlling the game and actually dictating play. And another player that I think is extremely integral, I know this is obviously with you it might be okay, but a lot of other people in chat might get onto me, is Anthony Martial. And I know people are not big fan. I know people are not a big fan of him, and I know Ty's in the building as well, so shout out to him. Ty's obviously Martial FC, but for me personally, that 10-minute cameo, whatever it was, that Martial came on against Tottenham, did the fundamentals, did the basic exceptionally well. I mean, it was the stuff that no one really claps because you expect a player to do that, but Rashford doesn't do it. It's as simple as that. Links the play, brings players into the game, collects the ball from deep, obviously carries the ball forward, obviously beats the odd man here and there, but just the perfect performance, what you'd want from a striker. The reports are coming out he wasn't particularly good against Burnley. However, for me personally, I do think players like Eriksen, Martial, and Sancho in particular, them three, technically sound players need to be starting more. And I do think, and I don't know what you think about this, Alice, as well. Obviously, I'm just going to rattle off a couple of players. I do see all the comments as well. Thank you, everyone, for obviously all the comments. We'll read them very shortly. But I think I put a tweet out. It might have been like in July or something. I can't remember exactly. But basically, just a couple of players. We've got Wan-Bissaka in the team. We've got, obviously, Casemiro in the team. We've now got Mason Mount in the team. We've got Bruno Fernandes in the team. We've got Marcus Rashford in the team. We've got Garnacho and Anthony. So that's like 8 players there. Like, for me, what they all have in common is none of them are particularly sound on the ball, and none of them are known for retaining the ball. I mean, he essentially started the team against Tottenham where no one's first nature is just to keep the ball. I mean, you wouldn't associate that with Wan-Bissaka, Bruno, Rashford, Garnacho. Anthony is probably the only one actually you would associate with. Mount, to be fair to him, has got that capability as well. Whether he chooses to do that, it's a different story. But Casemiro, again, I feel like almost 50 to 60% of the team that he's selecting aren't players known for retaining the ball. I think that's a major problem as well. And I don't think there's a problem with having players like Bruno in because you need those players that, are willing to take risks, obviously. But I just think he hasn't found the balance in the team. Now, how important do you think it is for him to just throw in a couple of those technicians? Obviously, it doesn't need to be the names I mentioned, but like just have that balance. Obviously, if you've got Rashford on one wing, you need, I don't know, a Sancho on the other wing, obviously, who's more technically gifted, obviously someone that's good in ball. Obviously, if you've got Rashford starting, you need Martial, obviously, who'll bring him into the game, sort of thing. Like, how important is it to him to actually find that balance? Because it's now, it's no longer preseason, can't really be experiment. For me personally, it needs to be able to find his team because we've got to pick up points. We're already like 3 points behind other teams. And obviously, we've got Arsenal coming up, which is almost likely not to be 3 points. So, yeah, what are your thoughts in terms of the balance of the team and how important is it for him to find that sooner rather than later?
I think it's really important because I think the Premier League is not an easy league. There's not an easy game, and a lot of it is about control. And at the end of the day, if you control a game well, you're going to create more chances. If you control a game well, you're going to concede less chances. We didn't control the game versus Wolves. We didn't control the game versus Spurs. We're lucky that Wolves are absolutely toothless up front. Otherwise, we would have probably dropped points to Wolves. We need to get that control back. And the problem is, if we're playing Casemiro on his own with Bruno and Mount really far away, the control there lacks. It can potentially work. And in the first half versus Spurs, it wasn't bad, but the attackers weren't finishing their chances, and that let us down. They showed signs it could work. But at the end of the day, it's not going to work against Arsenal. It's not going to work against any real top side. It might work against a Luton Town. Do you know what I mean? I think for me, we need to get that balance back in the midfield. I think the back five, it's not really a problem. it's that getting that balance back in the midfield. It's about if you're obsessed with playing Bruno, Matt, Casemiro, tell Bruno to play deep next to Casemiro. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
But I think it's like Maino or Amrabat really goes in there next to Casemiro for me, as I've said. I think it's so important that we figure this out because it's not looking good for United, and I don't trust these players to start turning on the manager when things go wrong. And yes, I don't agree with what Ten Hag did, and he was stubborn playing Rashford striker. But if we sat Ten Hag tomorrow and we brought in De Zerbi, would we be in a different place in 2 years' time? I don't think so. We've seen this with so many managers. The Glazers will not back the manager. They buy a few players here and there. Manager can't get these players playing. The same lazy players are here because we can't sell. You know, for me, it's so important that Ten Hag can find that control. And the one thing I'm going to say is this time last year, we also opening 2 games of the season. We were gone. Obviously, we signed Casemiro and Anthony off the back of that, and Casemiro's made such a difference. But we lost our first 2 games last season. We were worse than them, and Ten Hag turned it around. I have every belief that Ten Hag, you know, if he's not stubborn, and I think the only reason he's being stubborn is because Mason Mount's his signing, Anthony his signing, and he needs to drop his signings because that's what costed Ollie. Essentially, Maguire cost Ollie his job. Maguire got sent off in that Watford game. But it's just about, I think, Ten Hag does he see the problem? Will he adapt to it like he did last time? And hopefully he does.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like you kind of mentioned, obviously a lot of people are starting to turn on. For me personally, it's the stubbornness, and obviously we're going to get into the next part. Obviously, I know you need to go in like 15 minutes, but his stubbornness for me is what potentially might kill him, and in terms of like you might die on his sword. You see a lot with managers. You saw with Ollie. Every manager seems to have their favourites, so we're going to touch upon that very shortly. Shout out to Ty as well, saying good to see you live in the constructive convo. Hope you both well. All is well here. Hopefully you're doing well, my brother. Obviously, always a pleasure to see you in here. Got ITN, another season of shambles. Please don't blame the manager. He's been tricked like all the other managers previously. No vision. That's fair. To be nice, we say yes, people will be signing the one. We've already addressed that. Hopefully, Amrabat will be on his way soon. We're saying, Ball Prime Conte, on anyone would struggle within that scenario in the midfield, essentially alluding to the Casemiro competition. And then Lucky saying, we need a winger DM to back up Casemiro. His body seems heavy for him lately and definitely need a centre back. Regarding Casemiro, just very quickly, obviously a lot of people are getting onto him at the moment. For me personally, I do think he's just a bit rusty. Obviously, we have seen that with us previously as well. When he's had a bit of a break, he always seems to be rusty. And I don't know who it was on Sky Sports that said it was like a Spanish expert. They were quoting the Spanish expert, and the Spanish expert was essentially saying that Casemiro is normally always rusty. Has always been the case at Real Madrid as well. But Real Madrid aside, we've seen that on numerous occasions for us as well, where he's come back after a red card and he's dropped an absolute stinker regardless of the opposition. Yeah. He always takes a couple of games. So for me, I'm not worried. As Lucky said, that only Kante will really be able to deal with that scenario he's been put in at the moment. But listen, we're going to move on to obviously Ten Hag's stubbornness. Obviously, keep slapping a like, obviously, on the video. And of course, please do subscribe to the channel. As I've already said, Alice's links are in the title, so make sure you go subscribe to her as well. Obviously, make sure you show her love. Obviously, doing fantastic things on her platform. But listen, that being said, do you think the crowd will get on the team's back just before we move on? A bit of a random question here, but I mean, it is valid. Alice, do you think it is already at that stage where the crowd are getting restless at Old Trafford, or is it a bit too soon?
I think it's a bit soon, but I think with the crowd, it's sometimes if you think Man United lacking effort, I think that's when the crowd get on their back the more. Because you remember when we've lost games, but we've kind of played well, and it's just been that frustrating kind of stuff. And then when we've lost games and you're like, they weren't even making the effort. I think this early in the season, if the players are like in the Ollie Ragnick season where the players just gave up, if the players look like they don't care and they're not trying, I think that's when probably the crowd will go a bit like, which is fair enough, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we've got Arsenal after Nottingham Forest, so we really badly need to get a result. Yeah, so yeah, I agree with you. I think it's way too soon. Obviously, Hussam here in the chat, well, shout out to you, bro. Hopefully you're doing well. Ten Hag out yet? Question mark. I'm just going to address this. I'm sure our opinions are the exact same on this, but absolutely not Ten Hag out. I mean, as we've already mentioned, it's way too soon to be turning on the manager. And as you already said, it's regardless if we've got De Zerbi in tomorrow, there's going to be absolutely no change. I know a lot of people are saying Angi's coming. And to be fair, I'm a bit frustrated the fact that he's come in and you can already see patterns of play, etc. And why is Ten Hag? Why have we not seen patterns of play with Ten Hag? But I do think the scenario with the midfield is one of the biggest reasons that we aren't seeing what we need to see. And once we get that balance in the middle of the park, I think you'll start to see a bit more success. Obviously, Hassan's a Liverpool fan, but you see it with Liverpool as well. Like, their balance of their team isn't great. At DM as well, so I think they're in a kind of similar situation to us. Well, I say that their front line is actually brilliant compared to us, and their defense is a bit shaky. So maybe we're slightly opposite in that sense, but we have similar issues, but in different parts of the pitch. But speaking of front line, let's talk about the front three. I've kind of mentioned mine front three already, but Alice, I'm going to ask you. Of course, Ten Hag has been extremely stubborn so far, picking his favourites essentially. Regardless of their performances. What are your thoughts on the front three? Who are you picking for this Forest game if you're in charge?
Right, Rashford 100% goes on the left wing. Garnacho is best off the bench. Rashford goes left wing. If Højlund's not fit to start, let's be honest. If Højlund was fit to start, it'd be Højlund in the middle, Sancho on the right. If Martial is ready, I'd go with Martial, but I feel like he'll get injured. Do you know what I mean? And I'd go with Sancho on the right. It's either going to be Rashford on the left, Martial or Højlund in the middle, but I don't think they're ready, and Sancho on the right. Or it's going to be Rashford on the left, Sancho in the middle, and Pellistri on the right. They're my two options.
Right, I get you. So obviously, depending on either strikers are available, I think we've kind of gone for something similar. One thing I do not want to see, and look, he said it here, play Rashford as striker is awful. Erik Ten Hag needs to put him, put him on the left wing, Pellistri to the start, and it seems Garnacho isn't ready yet. I mean, look, he's essentially taking the words out of my mouth. But for me, two things. If I see Anthony on that right wing, and if I see Rashford up front, starting up front, honest to God, I'm going to be absolutely fuming. I've got to be honest. Like, there's no way on God's given earth that them two players can keep their spot. Obviously, Rashford will keep his spot in the team, but as you mentioned there on the left wing, there's just no way. Alice, like, I'm not going to lie. If the team sheet comes out and I see Anthony starting and Rashford in prime and Sancho on the left wing, which is very realistic, I would say there's like a 90% chance of that happening. Sancho left wing, Rashford in strike, and Anthony on the right wing. I'm gonna actually lose it. Like,
do you know?
I know people say don't get too emotional before the game, but Alice, come on. Like,
you know what's mad though is that Sancho played centre forward in pre-season and was good. So why, when Sancho comes on, is it Sancho on the left, Rashford still in the middle? When he brought Sancho on, I was right, brilliant. But he brought Sancho on to play left wing, and Sancho's best position is right wing or centrally for me. He's not as effective on the left because he doesn't have that pace and he's not direct. So it's like, if you play Sancho, Rashford, Anthony, if Sancho was in the middle and Rashford's on the left, I could cope with it. But it's the fact that Sancho will be on the left and Rashford will stay in the middle, which will wind me up.
Yeah, I know, I completely agree. I think obviously ITN is saying I stayed with Anthony on the right wing, Rashford left wing, and Martial has got to start right now. I mean, if Martial is available, he 100% starts. But yeah, for me personally, I can't see Anthony starting. If Anthony starts, that's really going to piss me off. Like, there's no way he can start this game. I know he did well against Forest away last season, got his goal and assist against them, but I couldn't care less, to be honest. Like, he's been absolutely horrendous in the first two games. Garnacho in his defense, he has consistently been poor when he started. So it'll be interesting to see how he is off the bench, but I'm not really worried about Garnacho too much. Yeah, but for me, front three, I probably agree with you. I would actually go Martial on the right. I'd go Sancho and Rashford on the left. I think that front line would actually cause havoc, and obviously we haven't seen much of it apart from in pre-season. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens regarding obviously that ladder. But listen, Alice, I just want to say thank you for coming. I know obviously you need to go very shortly, but obviously I'll give you an extra few minutes because of your coach. As a fellow coach as well, I understand. But listen, before you go, obviously, I'm going to carry on people for another 5 to 10 minutes. Obviously, I've got to go as well. I've got 5 sides. But Alice, just let the people know where they can find you. Obviously, always a pleasure. Actually, I've just forgotten. What's your score prediction? Before I let you go.
We're at home. So when we're at home, I back us. We have a good home record. And I back the back five to keep a clean sheet. I think Eriksen will give us a bit more stability than Mount in this game. And I think, knowing our luck, Elanga will score. So it'll probably be...
I forgot about Elanga. Oh, my God.
I think it's going to be like 2-1. Alanga just gets a goal, or I'm going to say 1-0. I'm going to go 1-0 because we're not scoring many at the moment, and hope the back four keep the clean sheet.
Well, I mean, to be fair, 1-0 is pretty realistic. All right. Yeah, no, I'm going to just say 2-0 just for the sake of having it. I mean, we can't have Rafael Varane as our top goal scorer going to the Arsenal. I mean, it's just absolutely, especially when we spent like 500 million.
You look the biggest threat versus Spurs as well going forward.
Yeah, honest to God. Yeah, he was actually, to be fair. I said that to my brother as well off air, but he was, to be fair, he looked like the most likely score, which is absolutely pathetic to say the least. But listen, Alice, before you go, let the people know where they can find you. As I've already said, her YouTube is in the title as well, so obviously feel free to click on that. But your socials and all that good stuff.
Yeah, big up Usman. Thanks for having me on the channel as always, guys. Make sure you smash that like for Usman and do subscribe to his channel if you're new. Always a pleasure to come on. Just type in Alice Talks Football on TikTok, Twitter, and YouTube, and I should come up there for you guys. Thank you very much for having me on.
No worries, Alice. Enjoy your coaching session. Obviously, we'll have a catch up. Hopefully with 3 points in the bag.
Yeah, hopefully.
No
See ya.
Right, okay, so I'm just going to obviously talk a bit more about the team before I go as well. Just give me 1 second. Right, okay, there we go. Basically, long story short, we're bloody retainers. And my bottom retainer has been coming out for the best part of like flipping 5 minutes, so I'm just taking it out now. I've actually had enough. Hence why I was probably talking the list for God knows how long. But anyways, hopefully it just sound normal now. Right, let's get a couple of scores in. So you got United Way saying 3-0 to Manchester United, and Lucky saying 2-0 to Man United. Listen, I'm not gonna lie. I think this performance, I need to see something from the team. I don't expect to see something, but I need to see something. I need to see changes in the starting lineup. Obviously, Alice kind of alluded to that as well with her selection. I would probably make 4 changes. Obviously, get in the chat as well what you guys would do if you were to change anything. For me personally, I think there is a lot of changes that need to be made. The first team, I would actually bring Delo in for Wan-Bissaka as well. I mean, Wan-Bissaka's not particularly done anything wrong or anything great, but I just think in a scenario where we're predominantly going to contain the ball or control most of the game, well, I like to think so at home against Forest, I would just prefer Delo on the ball over Wan-Bissaka. Obviously, the front three we mentioned already, and then Eriksen for me comes in again for the exact same reasons. We're probably going to dominate the ball. Yes, Eriksen's legs are potentially going to go, but then obviously can take him off on the 60-minute mark. And same with Martial. So Martial off after 60 minutes. I think he has to start this game for me personally. We need him from the jump. Obviously, when Martial goes off, you can do what you want with the front line. I don't really care. Hopefully, by the time he's off the pitch, the game is basically signed, sealed, and delivered in terms of the 3 points. Yeah, for me, 4 changes. Erik ten Hag, sort your shit out. Stop being so stubborn. Do not play the same plays again like you did off the back of that Wolves game. There's no way on God's given earth that these players warrant another start off the back of that abysmal performance against Tottenham Hotspur. I do not personally agree with players starting a game. Start position in the team should always be based on merit. It should always be based on performance in the previous games and also be deserved and a reward for excellent performance and whatnot. Not I'm going to start your game, prove to me that you can do X, Y, and Z. I don't agree with that. I know some people will obviously about Ten Hag as a manager. I obviously understand that he's got his ways of working with things, but for me, I just don't see a scenario where the same players that got slapped 3 days prior play again and actually turn it around. Especially in this Man United team, I think that should be a message to Ten Hag that I haven't got the balance right. I need to swap X, Y, and Z around to try and rectify that. In his defense, he did change the system slightly, he did change the setup, and it did work in the first half against Tottenham. But that being said, he reacted way too slowly in the second half for me, and basically we got slapped. I mean, he didn't react. I mean, in the second half, we were in a situation where we would get absolutely dominated, and I was a bit disappointed with Ten Hag. He didn't even put McTominay on. Just to shore it up, Eriksen, wherever it may be, it was extremely apparent that the midfield was getting overrun time and time again against Tottenham and against Wolves. And in both games, he didn't react to the situation. And against Wolves, we got lucky. Against Tottenham, we didn't. So for me, there's a few things that Ten Hag needs to change. It's his stubbornness being one of them. Secondly, his willingness to try new players that aren't his favourites, and also being a bit more ruthless. If players aren't performing, drag them off. I don't care if it's Bruno Fernandes. I don't care if it's Rashford, Martial, Sancho, etc., etc. They need to be dragged off the pitch. He seems to take off the same players at every given opportunity. Sancho will get hooked off Anthony would get hooked off. Garnacho would get hooked off. But why is Rashford not getting hooked off? Why is Bruno not getting hooked off? For me, them two need to get hooked off if they're not playing good enough. We saw the situation against Tottenham and Rashford was a bit frustrated when he came off the pitch. Could not care less if he's doing all that tantrum bullshit off the pitch. I honestly couldn't care less. I think for me personally, he needs to sort his shit out on the pitch. I need to see a better attitude from Rashford. Off the ball, he was absolutely embarrassing against Tottenham. You know, his lack of pressing, his lack of work rate is not acceptable at any club, let alone at the club of Manchester United stature. So for me, you know, Rashford needs to sort his shit out as well. And for also for me, Ten Hag needs to enforce that by hooking these players off. If they're not doing what you're asking them to do, why are you keeping them on the pitch? So yeah, little things like that, he definitely needs to change in the Forest game. I'm just going to read out a couple of your comments before I go. United Racing, like and subscribe, people. Palestri and Sancho need to come in. I think that is fair. Wouldn't be opposed to either of them starting. Look, he's put his team sheet in. Onana in goal. Wan-Bissaka, Martinez, Varane, Shaw, Casemiro, Bruno, Palestri, Sancho, Rashford, and Martial. I would presume Sancho would be the one in the middle of the park, in the 10 basically there. That's extremely attacking. I would like to see that just to see what would happen, but I just don't see that happening. But I like the fact that you're going for it at home against Forest. We should be going for it and throwing the kitchen sink at them, controlling the game, sustaining attacks. Absolutely no excuse whatsoever. Of course, I have got Langer there, so fair play to him if he does get a goal. You know, he seems like a good kid, and I wish him all the best. But hopefully, he doesn't do anything against us. To be honest, he has actually done quite well at Forest in the first 2 games. I think he's got an assist in both games, so fair play to him. Got off to an absolute flyer. That being said, that is the end of the video. I have got 5-star football myself, so I do need to shoot. Of course, just want to say a massive thank you to everyone that's tuned in, and obviously everyone that slapped a like. If you haven't, please do slap a like on the video. It's completely free, and of course, subscribe to the channel for obviously more content. We'll be back hopefully over the weekend with a quick match reacting to obviously the situation against Forest. But yeah, obviously shout out to Alice for coming through. As I've already mentioned, her link is in the title, so make sure you follow her as well as subscribe to the channel. Alice Talks Football, as she said, on all platforms, similar to myself. Usman Talks United on all platforms: TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter, which is where I'm predominantly based. There on TikTok, probably between the two. Anyways, enough waffling. I need to go. I need to get ready. I've already got the Man United kit on. Still repping the boys, even though we're absolutely shit. Thank you very much for everyone that's tuned in. Hopefully, you guys have enjoyed it. If you're watching this on repeat, get your comments in, get your score predictions, and thank you, as always, for your love. I appreciate it.